welcome back to the Empowered Intuitive Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Taylor Henderson, the Kind Not Witch, and I am joined with my beautiful co-host, Petra Costa from When Magic Awakes. And on today's episode, we are chatting about ghostly hauntings. When should I move out?
Anyway.
Anyway, look, this house, you don't move in here, right? There is all sorts of weird shit happening, from disembodied voices to phantom smells, knocks in the night, and don't forget, like, old little white lady standing at the end of your bed, just, watching.
I don't start with the white lady at the end of the bed, right? Oh my God.
A woman in white? Like, it's just the going spiritual aesthetic.
I can breathe through it.
Yeah, like, look, this house is cheap. I'm not going to get another opportunity like it. So, fucking, if I've got ghostly squatters, I'm just going to have to deal.
You are. You are.
Oh, so what is a ghost and what classifies a haunting?
What I've got here is the term ghost refers to the idea that the spirits of the dead, be them either human or animal, influence the physical world. And the idea of a haunting can often include anything from a sensed presence, tick, objects moving, tick, and spiritual activity. So that's what classifies a haunting.
Interesting. And so I suppose the big question here is, how do we know when we're haunted, and what classifies as paranormal activity as compared to what can be debunked? And I know you went down a rabbit hole with the whole explanations.
Debunking. Well, yeah. I actually didn't want to go the debunking side. I actually wanted to go give me evidence of first, and then we'll debunk.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's not what was prevalent when I did my Google searches and all of that kind of stuff, because the debunking just seems to be at the forefront. And that's fine. That's good. Ghosts, apparitions, paranormal have yet to be proved. There's been a reward offered, I think, for over $1 million that's been sitting there waiting for someone to claim.
What?
If they can.
Oh my goodness.
If they can scientifically prove it, which means it needs to be effectively replicatable in controlled conditions, you can claim this prize, and it still hasn't been claimed. That's fine.
That's fascinating.
But this is where we get into what are the most common explanations for the things that go bump in the night. So we've got the things that go bump, we've got the scratching in the walls, we've got catching things and apparitions out of the corner of our eye, or anything like that. The first one that comes up is sleep paralysis.
Yay! The old hag makes her appearance yet again.
Science comes and helps us out again with just saying to us, no, don't worry. It's not you, it's me. There's not an apparition at the end of your bed. You're not being haunted. It's not a ghost. It's not a demon. It's not a physical presence. It's just your brain malfunctioning. Really, effectively, it's
excellent.
Just things coming out of sleep.
That's what I want to be told. I want to be told my brain is malfunctioning.
And that came up twice, right? Because that obviously explains what's happening when we're coming through and in and out of a sleep state.
Yes.
But apparently there's quite a fair bit of hallucination that occurs, apparently, in a normal, healthy mind. Some of us are more prone to it than others.
Okay.
But it's basically just when our brain gets overactive and misinterprets signals.
Mm-hmm.
And because apparently our brain is filling in a lot of blanks at all times, because it actually can't take in all of the information around it, because it would be too much. So apparently what our brain does is takes in half that and almost like enhances it and fills in the blanks. Mm-hmm. And when it's doing that, it can create waking hallucinations, which is an obvious explanation of what's going on when we see an apparition.
Right.
So it's a hallucination. Yeah. So our brain is either malfunctioning coming in and out of sleep, or our brain is malfunctioning when we're in sleep. Now, this is the same brain that we can rely on 99.9999999% of the time to accurately compute all of this information. But if we see something that can in any way resemble a ghost or an apparition, it's failing, right? And I find that's a little bit.
That seems hilarious that if we can't seem to explain something,
Our brain's broken.
A hallucination stamp on it. Like the head scientist is up there going, I can't explain this.
I've got it.
Hallucination stamp.
Boom. I've got this.
Case closed. Moving on.
Case closed. And what we've also got, I wrote it down somewhere. There is actually a term for a condition called, I think it's pareidolia.
Yep.
And it basically is, again, because the brain is taking in a reduced amount of information and enhancing it like a digital enhancement, it does this. And that's why we sometimes, there's a lot of people that are more likely to see, earth spirit in a tree, or water spirit in the water, or Jesus on a toast. Jesus on the toast.
Jesus is in my fucking toast again.
Jesus again. I can see. Now, apparently that's condition. And then there's some of us that are more prone to being able to put the information together in a recognizable form, which is often faces.
Yeah.
Right? And so there are some of us that are more prone to doing that. And if you apply stress to those people, they're prone to do it more. So I'm like going, okay, I've got this thing. I've had my bathroom done twice, and in both set of tiles, I can see James Dean. Right?
What?
Set of tiles. Now, I never watched James Dean.
Yeah.
I never watched any of his movies apart from like when I was like 5 late at night when I shouldn't have been watching stuff.
Yeah.
And I would not be able to recognize a picture of him, but there's a tile that was in both of them, and I go, it's James Dean again. He's back.
Does that creep you out that James Dean being a little bit of a voyeur in your bathroom?
I got to be honest. I only see when I'm sitting on the toilet when I've got a lot of time.
Well, that's good. That's good then, because if he can't see you, you can't see him.
It's all good. It's all good. So I'm obviously that kind of person, right? Yeah. I'm the kind of person that will see the face shapes in things. But again, there's a huge difference between seeing James Dean in a tile and you're fully aware that that's just your brain making up a pattern. Yeah, and it's funny. You look up the clouds and you go, oh, look, there's a dinosaur. Oh, look, there's a this.
Funny. Yeah.
People love doing that, but it's not as if we're confusing that with an apparition.
No.
And so I think that this science saying, oh, your brain's broken when you're sleeping, your brain's broken when you're awake and you're hallucinating, your brain's broken because you've got this condition called pareidolia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of broken brains around there explaining something. So I have a little bit of problem.
Yeah. And
I have a little.
That it would be in people who are just, normal everyday people and not people who have like brain injuries or they've used substance abuse their entire lives and they've lost, significant process function in their brains because of that. Those are the people not being told that they have those conditions. It's just, normal everyday run of the mill.
I find it interesting. And then we go on further to get really sciencey and we say, okay, no. Again, it's okay. It's because of the electromagnetic field that's around us. Now, we've all watched a Bruce Hauntings show.
Yes.
And we know that when people go in there, they're often getting readings on their super sensitive devices.
Yep, they're EMF detectors. Yep.
When they're in a place that's haunted or people are experiencing stuff, etc. And they accept the fact that this EMF background noise is what's giving our brain a little bit of a buzz and, again, sending off these little hallucinations that we are perceiving and picking us up that. I've got 2 problems with that. Problem number 1, we're in a time now where we've never been surrounded by as much electromagnetic field as we have before because every device in our home is in
everything has electricity. Yes.
Everything, Wi-Fi, and God forbid, let's not start on the 5G conspiracy theory as to what that's doing for our brains.
Yeah.
But I put forward science that if it was as simple as our brains being super sensitive to EMF, would not ghosts, hauntings, visitations, and all of those things have increased exponentially over the last 100 to 200 years because
Yeah,
we've
we
got
would just all be hallucinating to the
we
wrong
would just
dude.
literally
There'd be fucking apparitions everywhere, and everyone would have Jesus in their toast in the morning.
and that's where I sort of like go, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get that I get that this can impact it, and it's energy displacement, it's low frequency sound, it's all of these things that are part of our modern environment. But
yeah.
we've been having apparitions before the beginning, in the beginning of humanity.
Exactly, exactly.
There wasn't
Yeah,
much EMF there, apart from EMF that we had been evolutionary prepared for.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's not as if
yeah,
we were born here,
yeah.
unless we're coming into an alien hypothesis here. We were born on Earth.
Yes, let's
The
not go down
EMF
the
that was
alien
here
rabbit
and
hole.
the sun activity, all of that was there. And they've got ghost reportings from Paleolithic time, to
Yeah,
my understanding, like
yeah.
right back.
Mm.
So I say to you, science, bollocks.
I think things can't be so easily explained as they think it is. And for especially since, they literally got a bounty on who can say ghosts exist or not. They haven't got it all in under the bag. And yeah, I get it. Sometimes it can be a little bit woo-woo, but when you look into things being as long back as they have been in human history of specters and apparitions and hauntings and things like that, not to mention when they're coinciding with like places that have seen significant amounts of trauma and have emotional ties to them. There's got to be something more there that's going on for us.
Absolutely. And you've got to remember the fact that for all of the people that want that $1 million, there are way more people trying to disprove it completely because they just don't like the idea of the paranormal because it's a pseudoscience.
Yeah,
And it actually is an affront to science that even the concept that it's still around and has yet to be disproved.
yeah.
So I'm not going to go out on a ridiculous limb and say, oh, because you can't disprove it, it's therefore proved, because that's not how scientific evidentiary
No,
proof works, right?
it's either yay or nay on the
Yeah,
other side.
yeah. And I go back to this thing that I was talking about before, Tay, with the what did I say? It's Occam's razor, where
Occam's razor. Yes,
it's a
yep.
philosophical concept that sometimes the simplest explanation is correct. And so they basically say, don't look for horses, or don't look for zebras when you're probably surrounded by horses.
Yeah.
And the thing I say to that is sleep paralysis, brain breakage due to pareidolia, electromagnetic fields, low frequency sound from our air conditioning units, mold, psychedelics in the air. These are all things science are putting forward to say ghosts don't exist. I would say the simplest explanation is perhaps they do.
Perhaps they do.
Just perhaps they do.
Perhaps they do. And you know what? And the simplest explanation can be used with debunking too. Like sometimes the knocking in the walls is not like a creepy poltergeist thing trying to get your attention and creep you out in the middle of the night. It's literally, you've probably got rodents in your ceiling.
I got a possum in my
Or
room.
possums. Yeah, we've had possums in our roof, or you might have rats or mice or something scurrying around. And I know too that sometimes we do try to rationalize things a lot as well on the other side of that, like because we know what those sounds normally sound like. We're used to them. It's the sounds and things that are out of the norm that make us go, maybe I have a spooky hanging about that
Yeah.
something is here that shouldn't be here. Like the feel is off. And that's actually one of like the indicators that you're being haunted. So I'll go through the little list that I have of what some of the key indicators are that you're being haunted.
I'm ready to tick.
Yes, let's make a checklist. So
Check it.
item number 1. You might be hearing or experiencing disembodied sounds or voices. So that's where they have no point of physical origin, and
No, I've never experienced
that. Temperature differences. So a lot of people report cold spots, happening with the appearances of specters, shifts in moods or abnormal behaviors, and strange illnesses that come out of nowhere. So, yeah, this is interesting because this is supposedly their presence's influence over our own energetic bodies and beings, and the illnesses, a lot from the things that I've seen mediums talk about and stuff like that, that's the energy drawing, because they're drawing upon that energy to sustain themselves, and so that diminishes our vitality, so to speak. So animals and children behaving differently.
Okay.
Which, it's always been said that they're especially sensitive.
Sensitive.
Yeah.
And children, I truly do believe the reason children are so sensitive is because they haven't had their belief system broken yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like they still haven't had rational thought tamping down everything that's going on in their brains. So sometimes they just put together what they're seeing rather than rationalizing what they're seeing.
Yeah.
It's my theory behind that
one. Their innocence just leads the way. Like, they're not doubting what they're receiving.
Yeah. They're putting the stuff together. Okay, so I've got a few ticks so far. Is there any more?
Yeah. Disturbances in the structure. So sounds, movement of doors, cracks,
mold.
I've seen cases where cupboards have like flown open and things like that, and things are shifting that normally wouldn't be shifted. So
yep. Yes. They're all good. I might have had a couple of those, but in our defense, we've had a lot of drought around in Australia for quite a bit of time. And most people's houses have shifted to a certain degree and cracks have formed.
Well, mine's doing it now. Like, as soon as it starts to get hot, the wood, especially the doorways and that, it starts to swell. And so you can't shut the door properly. And so every time one of the cats goes through the door or one of the kids goes through the door, and you sit there and think, oh, like, what was that? And it wasn't actually anything spooky. It was just like the door wasn't latched properly. So it's just coming open on its own. So,
and I think the key to a lot of these things is like there'll be cold spots because there might be sun coming through a window and another area has got a certain amount of thermal mass that it's holding heat or holding cold. And we're not all engineers to understand the way the thermodynamics in a building works. So I can understand that sudden shifts. Like, honestly, if you wake up in the middle of the night and it's a 30-degree night and you're like huffing out cold air, just go. Just don't even pack the bag. Just literally. I don't understand in the movies when you're like, your sheet's been ripped off, it's flown across the room.
And they're still
there. And I'm literally breathing out like frosty morning, breath.
Yeah.
And it's no reason it could be that cold. And I'm just, I'm going to stay. I'm just going to see what's going on.
That's like in The Conjuring when Carolyn Perrin, the mother, she like wakes up and she's got like all these bruises on her arms and things like that, and her kids are like seeing shit in the corner of the room and stuff. I'm like, get
out.
Like, I would have been out of there like
get out
like minutes ago.
This is the thing. How many signs do you need to be given? Before, like, it's all very well, I've got cracks in my ceiling, it's drought. Oh, my door didn't shut properly because the door jam's a bit out of alignment. Oh, my lights flicker. Oh, you might have an electrical disturbance. Okay, so I've got an electrical disturbance. Either way, you should be out of that house. Right? Because it's either haunted or it's falling down around your ears.
It's structurally
unsound.
It's going to fall the fuck down on your head any minute.
Whichever one you feel more comfortable believing.
Yeah.
I reckon that's fine. Was there any more on the list, Tay?
Not my list, but I feel like there's certainly phenomena which can help you differentiate what type of haunting you experience, and then that might sort of build upon the list of indicators. So maybe I'll just touch a little bit on the types of hauntings.
Go for it.
Firstly, we've got a residual haunting. So, a residual haunting is caused by an energetic imprint from either an emotionally charged or extremely traumatic event. And it's usually the imprinting of a period of time, and it kind of plays through as like a little bit of a movie on repeat, so to speak. And you might experience it as visual or audio or smells or sensations, and the entities or the spiritual things happening within that haunting, they can't communicate with you and you can't communicate with it, but a lot of people say that they can record it, if you paranormal investigation wise.
Yep.
Then you've got
Can I just stop you on that point?
yeah.
When I was looking into this, it came up with actually a thing. It's called the stone tape theory. And it
What is
came
it?
up, and there's been a British TV series about it, and there's been lots of things on it. But it's basically exactly what they use to explain residual haunting. And it's the concept, very similar to how a VHS or the old tapes used to be able to record voice, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's effectively saying the environment does the same thing. So when large amounts of energy are dispersed, whether they be
Right.
good, bad, or indifferent, those the environment is taking it on, and then it can get a little bit of loop. It can actually play like a visual or an auditory loop of the energy that it's recorded. And I find it interesting that people would debunk that as making any sense, yet they'll happily put on a movie or a DVD or realize that that is someone's voice being recorded. We are watching the memory.
Yeah.
A lot of those people we're watching the memory of. So what you're effectively saying is that a DVD player is more able to play back something than your own brain. Because what we're saying is your brain's just picking up on these energetic fields.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
called it's called the stone tape theory.
That's fascinating. I
And
actually like that.
yeah, you have to look into it. It's really interesting. It's a thing, and it was originally, from what I can gather, put forward as a theory back in the 1800s, and then a lot of paranormal investigation has gone in around it to try to see how much it can be substantiated with the use of all of these electromagnetic field recording
Funny you
devices,
say
etc.
that actually, because one of the things that can sort of amplify or cause like paranormal phenomena and hauntings is being located near a body of water, because water retains energy, and it's known for its ability to be imprinted energetically. That's why a lot of people make, full moon water and crystal elixirs and flower essences. Like that's the spiritual science behind that. But it's also a conductor of energy and electricity. So
Yep.
they've attributed that type of thing to, being near large bodies of water.
Yeah.
And also a lot of hauntings, residual hauntings, are more about the land that it's on and less about the structures. And sometimes you just get a feel for that when you walk onto land or onto country, and you feel like you can feel what's happened there before you even know what the place is about. So yeah,
Yeah.
don't take theory has me one.
And let's not just assume that this haunting is around positive or negative energy. It's not always negativity, but I think it would be reasonable to state that when we are in a state of distress or pain or fear, that's a very, very, very strong primal emotion. So
Yeah.
it makes sense to
Yeah.
me if I'm going to basically boof this energy out, it'd be more likely me doing that and going, yum, this lamb roast tastes real great. I just don't. I think you'll feel the energy
Oh,
of me
this
cutting my
mutton
finger. If
lives.
I, if I cut my finger cooking the roast, I
Yeah.
can tell you people could hear me swearing from out the front of the house.
Yeah.
When I'm going, this tastes really good, I don't. It doesn't have the same poof
Yeah.
impact.
Well, I mean, look at our brains. Look at how we retain memory ourselves. We are more likely to remember something that is negatively impacted us and has
Yeah,
a negative association than we are something that's positive or something that's brought us joy in the past. We're more
yeah.
likely to recall the negative. So why not the earth?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll just make a connection to with the stone tape theory is also the concept of, correct me with my pronunciation, of psychometry, which is the
ding ding ding.
I'm getting there with this.
Yay!
I made my big, what was it, Mesopotamia
Yes.
mistake, and I'm just trying to get back from it.
Petra has come back from her Mesopotamia.
I have, right? But obviously there is a field of study where people, whether it be psychics, mediums, or whatever, spiritualists, whatever, that they can get an energy from an object. And from that object, they can know a little bit about its history. And of course, we've got all of the horror movies that come about from Annabelle and different things like that.
Yeah.
That sort of like posit the theory that a haunting or a negative energy can attach to an object as well as a location.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's interesting because both, if you want to suspend disbelief just a little bit, like if you just want to just like, okay, I'm going to push all of my debunking theories aside, that sort of makes logical sense.
Yeah.
To me, anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But what other kind have we got? So we got a residual haunting.
We've got residual hauntings, which
sounds like a pretty good one. It's
like it's not going to harm you. It literally will not do anything to you. It's just a tape playing on repeat. It might creep you out a little bit to hear screams in the night, but hey, at least you know something's not actually going on at the end of your bed. So the next one I have here is attachments, and I personally included this because as always the risk of bringing something home with you when you go out to these places, particularly if you're going to places that are like haunted, or they've got some form of history, or like you went to the cemetery and decided to be a dickhead and disturb people. You're probably going to bring something back with you. Like there are certain spiritual energies and entities that act like gum on your shoe. And so in accidentally bringing that back to your house, you've now, exposed yourself to a haunting. The other one.
So you're telling me that perhaps it wasn't wise of me to run through a cemetery at 12 o'clock at night as a prank when I was about 18 years old. You're telling me that probably might have been the smartest
probably
move.
Probably not the best move to make.
No, I didn't disturb anybody. No. I just walked through the beautiful cultivated.
Oh, look, you can do a cemetery walk if you're being respectful and things. That's fine.
But we did get scared, and we did end up a whole group of us just like going just running out.
Yeah, but I mean, if old freaking Stingy Jack decided, hey, she looks all right, I'm gonna go home with her tonight. She doesn't know it yet, but she will. Yeah, that probably
it can happen.
Yeah,
and
it can happen. The other one I've got here is PK manifestations or poltergeists. This is interesting because they're actually human generated. So you've got a lot of people out there who, according to paranormal beliefs and things like that, actually have unknown gifts or abilities, or they're sensitive. And what they do is they pretty much charge themselves up to a degree, or with like unresolved emotions and things like that, and they generate these PK beings that we call poltergeists. Now, if anyone's seen the movie Poltergeist, you'll know that that's the furniture moving, that's the obnoxious knocking, and really just
I think the poltergeist is they call it. I think it actually comes from the German, and I'm
yes
spitballing here that comes from noisy ghost. Like poltergeist, because I know you have a polterabend, and a polterabend is like a noisy night. So it's basically a noisy ghost. It's a ghost that actually can have physical impact on the world around it. Rather than just a visual or auditory.
Yes, so they're very interactive, not always in a good way. A lot of it from people being sensitive, having abilities, really good at channeling and building their own cones of energy, so to speak, and then those get created into these weird ass poltergeist beings, which in chaos magic is kind of a little bit like a servitor. So a servitor is a part of yourself that you purposefully summon to go and fulfill an intention or a request. But with someone who is just doing that inertly, there's no focus for that energy, so it's just causing chaos.
Yeah.
So that one is fascinating. But
and sorry,
right.
am I correct in around that there has been more scientific study around that being among young adolescent girls?
I was just about to say that it is reported to be most common in teenagers, especially girls. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look, you've got two of them in your house. So good luck
Well,
to you.
yeah, yeah.
Good luck to you in about 10, 12 years.
There'll be
That's all I'm
poltergeists
saying.
all up in this bitch. Luckily,
But that
I've
is
got a bit of
interesting.
experience.
But it is very interesting because females obviously have a different hormonal pattern. And it wouldn't seem to me as being ridiculous when we know that all of our, what is it, the pituitary gland and the different parts of our body
Yes, yes, yes.
are hormonally activated. And it would seem ridiculous almost not to expect a escalation if you have a bit of an ability. I know Stephen King talks about this all of the time. In all of his books, you have this
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
blossom, this bloom of
yeah,
psychic ability and function.
yeah.
And you either get past that crest and you develop into some, a being with powers, or it just folds back and it doesn't have the energy to actually form into something more. And I don't think he's so far off the mark there. I think that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me.
Oh, it
Got
does, definitely. I feel like I experienced a lot more in myself energetically and things once I got into high school as opposed to when I was younger. And that's not discluding teenage boys or anything either, but I think women are more sort of connected intuitively and energetically to the things around them as opposed to men sometimes. And so we mature a lot quicker as well.
Exactly. That's what I was
So
going to say.
yeah,
Our hormonal changes are completely different. And and this is just not about growth hormone. It's not just about all of these different kind of things. So I think we just need to understand that there might be different triggers and guys might be triggered at a different time, but they don't have parents focusing on them as much. So they don't have like these, it's not getting recorded
yeah,
because
yeah,
it might be happening later on when they're already off doing what it is they're doing.
yeah,
Whereas these young girls are hopefully still in the love and care of their family. So these changes can be recorded. So
yeah.
I find that interesting. So we got attachments, poltergeists,
Attachments,
residual haunting.
poltergeists,
What else we
residual
got?
hauntings, and then we've got intelligent or active hauntings. So this
Yeah.
is pretty much any type of paranormal haunting that is communicating or trying to attempt to
Yeah.
interact with you in some form or way. This can be human spirits, this can be animal spirits, and this can also be demonic hauntings as well. So that's quite a it's common but rare at the same time. It's an abnormal occurrence because, as we know, not everyone believes in demons and things like that. But you've got these inhuman entities that
Yeah.
are
We call them
purposefully,
negative energies.
yeah, negative energies, malevolent presences, things that are literally there just to cause shit. Because that's what they feed off. They feed off the fear and the anxiety and things. And and alongside the demonic hauntings and that, you've got the shadow beings. And the shadow beings we touched on when we touched on sleep paralysis and that, because the more notorious ones are the silhouettes or the robed hooded figures or the figures with the hats. So those all go into an intelligent or active haunting because they're trying to interact or communicate with you in some way or form.
And as we were talking the other day in the Halloween post, if your goal is to scare someone, which if you're feeding off the energy of it, and if we put forward that we believe that fear and anxiety and those kind of things are a stronger, easier emotion to tap,
Yeah.
it would make sense that they would come at us with something that was scary to us that we also recognize from our collective consciousness.
Yes. Yeah.
That coming up with some
Exactly.
random ass thing that we've seen on a movie of a new alien might not impact us as much because we'll have that disbelief and go, oh, that's because I watched such and such at 2 o'clock in the
I
morning.
just watched that scary movie. It's obviously freaking me out a little more than it is. But if you are seeing like a figure or something that you just like, what the fuck is that? You know, like I've had some experiences where I've seen something and I've gone, what the hell is that? And I've seen it that often, or like a recurring. Like I used to work in an aged care home, and a lot of people talk about black-eyed children, and I never had experiences with black-eyed children until I got to this aged care home. And it was funny because a lot of the oldies would talk about seeing children's spirits, and I'm like, oh, that's sweet, you know. And like a lot of these people have dementia or Alzheimer's and things, and you're thinking they're probably just having like flashbacks of when their kids were young and stuff, because they do, like, that's a real thing. But you know, I used to have a lady who would tell me that she needed to catch the train and stuff, and that she could see her dogs and all that sort of thing. And you know, so you don't bring much credence to it. They're, you know, they've got cognitive impairments and things. But then I actually saw them. So I was on late shift, and I used to do late shift a lot. It was like 2 to 11 p.m. And at about like 10 p.m. after everyone's, you know, gone to bed and you're doing the tidying, and we would do a heat pack round stuff for like everyone who had aching muscles and shit. And I'm running these heat packs back and forth, and I just happened to look down the corridor going into like this big set of hospital doors, and the doors were shut, but in the windows of the doors I could see like these little faces with black eyes just staring at me. And then I sort of like went back to the heat packs, and I'd come back again and they were still there. And so I actually like tried to get up the courage to walk up to the doors and open them. But by the time I walked up to the doors, the faces had actually gone. And I was like, this is fucked. They're not kids.
Yeah.
I knew they were not kids. I'm like, that is something trying to pretend to be kids. And I've also seen like a shadowy figure in the same place. There used to be the room, and it was like room 16, and it was right down the end of the first wing. And if anybody listening to this knows where I work, you know exactly what room I'm talking about. But anyone who went in there would fall sick and die pretty much like within weeks of being there.
Yeah.
So one night I went down that way, and we had a resident in that room, and I went to check on them, and I saw like this massive shadowy figure just standing next to the bed in the room, and it freaked me the fuck out. Like I got out of there, and I went to my mate who was working with me on shift, and I told her about it. She was like, yeah, there's something in that room. For the people that go in there to not last very long. And those types of entities and things, they tend to go after the sensitive or the vulnerable. And I also think that's another reason why children see them, is because they are vulnerable.
Yeah.
So side tangent, but yeah.
Side tangent, but a bloody good side tangent.
Yeah.
And I will state that we are going into black-eyed children and other things in a future podcast, because it's just a subject that can't be spoken about. We have to really go into it fully.
Yes.
But look, I must admit, I've had my own experiences with otherly worldly beings. And two of the most predominant is that I think I mentioned when we're doing sleep paralysis that I had something that came to me in my dreams that would also manifest in the waking world for periods of time afterwards.
Yeah.
But it could take on any face that it wanted to. And that's what I think if you believe in this stuff, and we're going to assume you do now, that if you're still listening to this podcast, I think from this point in time on, we're assuming you believe it to a certain degree. They could take any face they want. Yeah. Okay. So don't think because it's some a relative of yours that you know you loved and adored, and they come with that face. Don't automatically assume it's them. Don't shut it out. Trust your instinct and how you feel, right? Because a loved one will never give you anything but loving energy. Right? They just will not. Even if I don't believe they will. Even if they're really concerned for you or your well-being or whatever, it'll still be the concern you feel.
And they won't play coy with their presence either. They will
They won't-
make themselves known, and they will do it in a way that you will know it's them and that you are familiar with their energy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And these things can be pesky little things to shake
Yeah.
when they want to make a pain in the ass of themselves. And I have been blessed with children that are sensitive to things as well, and have had periods of time in their life where they both move on in their own way, but they always have experiences when they come back and they be annoying little efforts. Now, sometimes it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's beautiful because it's a loved one that comes to them and
Yeah.
they can recognize them by certain bits of clothing
Yeah.
that they would not have known that person wore until they told it to someone else.
Yeah.
So my daughter saw someone who was wearing a certain kind of hat. The only photo she's ever seen of that person, he was wearing a military hat.
Yeah.
So she had never seen a photo or had a visual reference
Yeah.
for him wearing a different kind of hat than the military hat. And he's
Yeah.
such a striking figure. And in his military clothes, you wouldn't imagine him of anything else unless it was a true apparition, in my personal belief, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when she saw him, she was like, and he had very clear messages to her. She was only very young. And he had a hat on, and the hat was very significant. And it was only later when Kirsten was telling the story where it was, oh, that's her granddad.
Yeah.
Oh, my granddad, sorry. And he would have that hat on, and it was his like he never went out without his hat. He was always very particular
Yeah.
about his
Yeah.
hat, and it was the kind of hat that Kirsten would never have seen. She would never have any reference to, but she was able to describe it from what she'd seen in, like, I think, a dress-up store. Do you know what I mean? So she's like, oh, I had that kind of hat on, like this person. And
Yeah.
it was instant recognition. And the other one we have is we have a family ghost that sort of like preys around the edges of things. And she is not a good presence.
Yeah.
She comes to herald someone's passing.
Right. That's
Um,
interesting.
she's a woman. She's in black.
Yeah.
And there have been instances of family members who are actually seeing this woman but feeling the need to follow. And they actually have followed her all around London. And she's always just gone past a corner, and they haven't been able to get to her. But very shortly after that, that person's passed away.
Wow.
And we've had many members of our family that have seen this woman. And I know my mum has seen her, and
Yeah.
she would appear to her at the end of her bed.
Yeah.
And mum knew that if she went with her, if she got up and got closer to her,
Yeah.
she was going to be the one that takes her away. Now, I'm not saying this woman is negative in and of herself, but she heralds
No,
it.
but she comes when something is gonna happen. So
Yeah,
that's
and she
the
doesn't give
moment.
you a
Yeah.
feeling. She doesn't give you a feeling of it's okay. I'm here
Yeah.
for you to transition.
Yeah.
If it was that energy of I'm a spirit that's going to help you transition
Yeah.
of what's going on, uh, okay, but that's not the energy she gives
Yeah.
at all. And I've
It's a
had
little bit like
experience.
a banshee without the screaming, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
really not,
interesting.
really not nice.
Yeah.
And it's gone back in a family line. So their
Yeah.
family line that this comes through is the family line of mine that comes from gypsy stock. And I
Right.
use that word,
Yeah.
not wanting to offend.
Yeah.
I use that word in recognition of the fact that that's how my
Ancestors
ancestors
were. Yeah.
use the word to me.
Yeah.
And so we've got that kind of stuff going on in the background.
Yeah.
So it's easy just to discount things, but when they happen across generations,
Yeah.
um, in similar ways, or there's bits of information that people wouldn't have known,
Yeah.
again, we go back to,
The simplest explanation is probably the easiest explanation to
exactly.
go with.
Now,
Exactly.
my little tip, my
Mm.
little tip in relation to this, if people find themselves with, and even just as a feeling of well-being, is bells. Bells I've found to be
Yes.
my saving grace.
Yeah.
That just having them there when you've got that moment when you're feeling uncomfortable,
Yeah.
you're feeling that, whether it be negative energy because you had a bad week in the house or negative energy because you think it's something else, just ringing a bell through a place can really just, whether it's all in your head or not, I'm not saying, but it can make you feel better.
Well, bells are renowned for energy clearing. Like
Yeah.
they're used in various traditions. I mean, we have witches' bells, which we put in entryways, in doorways, and things like that, so that when they're ringing, they're cleansing the energy that's going in and out of a place. You know, is
Churches
that
have them for the same
religious?
reason.
They have
Churches
they
have them
have
for,
bells for the cleansing and clearing and protecting of the place. You know, it's
yeah.
kind of like an alarm system, nearly.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting. Now, I have a whole heap of stuff here
Yes.
about the science behind the conservation of energy and Einstein's theory and so many other doctors in
Yes.
relation to this that's beyond belief. But I think I'm going to save most of that
Yeah.
for when we talk about near-death experiences and the
Yes.
concept of moving on and why we believe that it is possible for consciousness to move on. Because
Move on.
let me just say, there's a huge amount of scientific minds that have have got a belief system that there is a consciousness, that
Yeah.
our soul is separate to our body.
Yeah.
There was even if techniques in that they were actually believing they could measure the weight of a soul, but we
Yeah.
just don't have the appropriate measurement techniques
Yes.
yet.
Yes.
So there's a lot of really, this is serious science. So we're talking about Einstein came up with it first.
Yeah.
Then we've got Dr. Henry Stapp, who worked with Heisenberg,
Yeah.
which everyone knows, even if you just know it from Breaking Bad. You know
Yeah.
he's famous. You
Yeah.
know he's famous in the field.
Yeah.
So there's really renowned scientists, and there's one here that is and people can research it if they want to. But there was a doctor that his name was Dr. Fenwick, and
Yeah.
he was a neuropsychiatrist who did not believe in any of it
Yeah.
until he had a person in his care have a near-death experience.
Yeah.
And then he went on, and I'm not going to go into any more detail apart from the fact that he went on to research 300 separate people who had had near-death experiences. And his insight that he gained from that is quite mind-blowing. But
Wow.
I'm going to
Yeah.
save all of the science for another time because I
Yeah.
think we haven't got time because we still
Yeah.
want to go into some of the instances of the most
But
common
you
things.
bring up a good point with the near-death experiences, because like alongside the sensitive peoples, right, there are people who have had near-death experiences where before they would not have experienced any of this stuff, but now they're kind of like an open channel to it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I know personally I've had a couple at a very young age, and I mean I experienced things before then, but then after then it was kind of like you've had a foot in the other world.
Yeah, the
So
door opened.
the door
And it
opens.
ain't so easy to shut it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, and when we're going into the causes of like hauntings and things, that's a big thing. So you've got like when people are, like I said earlier, they're playing in graveyards, they're using Ouija boards, or they're having seances and things like that. And it's not the actual use and ceremony that's
That's
doing
right.
it. It's the fact that they're not respecting, they don't have energetic protections in place, and they're not closing
Bingo.
down their rituals properly when they're finished, because there are lots of practitioners that do this day in day out. They're quite artful in it. It's when you get the novice people that are doing it for a laugh that actually open up fucking doorways to places that they shouldn't have, in places that are renowned to be haunted, or they know have traumatic pasts or things like that, or that there are recorded entities, and so they literally just they open the door for them having a laugh.
Yeah. And I think conceptually, when you look at it in terms of doors opening, energetic connections,
Yeah.
whether you mean to make them or don't mean to make them,
Yeah.
I was told by someone once, yeah, near death experience, all kind of that kind of stuff, that they see your light.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call
Yeah.
it light, as in oh my light,
They
or just
said
my
they
energy,
sense you. Yeah,
they
they
sense your
haunt
energy,
you.
and we know that through the laws of conservation of energy, if you look at it from going back to science again,
Yeah.
that energy needs to be replaced, otherwise it breaks apart,
Yeah.
right? It can't, it will slowly I think that's the second law of the conservation of energy. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that when they see a battery,
They go for it. They go for it. Of course they would.
tap into it.
Yeah. So
Why wouldn't
that's the
you?
whole premise of cold spots and illnesses and things like that caused by paranormal phenomena and, specters, because they're trying to draw energy from somewhere. And a lot of them, they're drawing the energy so that they can either communicate or that they can interact. And there's something that I've experienced a few times, which is really uncomfortable, but it happens, is when there are beings that try to jump you. And what I mean by jump you is that they try to get in you so that they can zap your energy, and then they can utilize you as a conduit to do what they want. And it's quite an uncomfortable feeling. Like the heckles raise on your back, your hands get warm, your feet get warm, you feel like you got hairs standing up on the head and on the ends of your friggin' neck, and you tense up, and like it's sort of just like that. Oh, like it's kind of like that feeling of like someone standing behind you, except they're now in you.
It's amped. It's more personalized.
Disgusting.
Well,
Get out, Genji Jack.
I got to say, like a lot of this, I've inadvertently didn't know about, but in the book, in my book series that I've just been working on, is about a possession. There's a possession as part of it.
Yeah.
And the things that comes out is the bruising. And I've got actually three stages of possession. That the first stage is to touch you, to make physical contact.
Yeah.
The second time is to weaken your mind.
Yeah.
And it does that by injuring you and zapping your energy and doing all that kind of stuff. And the third stage is taking over.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of the stages that Ed and Lorraine Warren talked about in terms of demonic possession. It's like infestation, and it like an infestation, and then there's one other, and then it leads to possession. But it's like pretty much the stages of which they work up to make it vulnerable enough to then take over. And
because it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're gonna want to keep your vessel.
Yeah, and
it wants it. So there's going to be
down enough. If you're worn down enough, and we see this in just even with people and that, you're going to give in eventually. And so that's what they're working towards. And they're not saying every spirit or entity is out to get you and
to get you.
Like that. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are just like a bit friggin' lost, they don't have a guiding light. They're for a reason, or they've been called back unfairly, Sometimes you don't even need a Ouija board to do that. It can just...
No, and I think too, let's not discount the fact that there are spirits that come back just to help you transition.
Yeah.
Like, because I've been in situations where people have been unwell around me, and they're nearing that time.
Yeah.
And during that time, I felt their loved ones coming to them in that moment.
I've had similar experiences.
And you in aged care, you probably would have had that a lot with people in the days leading up to it.
I had somebody's brother come in, like deceased brother, and the resident would talk, like, he was saying, oh, he's here, he's here to come and get me. And I actually did experience that one day, and I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty
that is I think we would all be more than comforted by the thought that we had our beloveds there for us when it comes to our time to transition. Now, I don't think we're going to have time to go through all of the different hauntings. Does that mean we're going to do that in another episode, do you think?
Well, we've touched on the different hauntings definition wise, but I think what we could honestly have another episode where we just talk about like
the Bell Witch, the Queen Mary hauntings, Amityville Horror.
Yeah, Dreamworld. Who would have thunk Dreamworld was haunted, right? But it's on the top 10 friggin' list of places that are haunted in Australia.
10.
Top 10.
One thing I'm going to say, for all of the people that want to debunk it just so readily, and it's all just all of those different things, EMF and all that kind of stuff, I will put forward that you have a legal right of disclosure if you believe your house is haunted, or if something bad has happened on your premises. Now, this legal right of disclosure, if
Right.
you haven't done that, you can actually be taken to court. And the court law, especially in US, has actually had legal precedent where it was actually upheld that the person that didn't exactly. So it's easy to discount it, but I don't think many of us would want to go into buying a property not knowing if there was a history of that.
Yeah.
Whether that might make it more attractive for them or
Yeah.
less attractive is a different point,
Yeah.
right? It's a completely different point. But I think
Depending
most
on who the
people,
buyer is, like someone might be right into that,
exactly.
you know.
There's some people that would pay
Yeah.
heaps more. Like there was who did it? Oh my goodness. Nicolas Cage
Yeah.
spent millions of dollars more on a house because it was said to be haunted.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's really difficult to discount it completely
Yeah.
when there's actually law around it.
Yeah.
And furthermore, even if there wasn't law around it, people would think you were ethically beholden to let
Yeah.
people know that.
I knew that you had to disclose like murders or whatever before you
No.
sold property, but I didn't think you had to disclose like supposed hauntings.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying I'm up on Australian law, but I know this is US law as well as
Yeah.
UK law.
Yeah.
So I can just say both in those two places. We might not have it in Australia,
Yeah.
but I even that will, and you know what? Even if it's just US,
Yeah.
they've got a much bigger population than us.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's been upheld. So I just think, and I don't think there's many of us that can actually look ourselves in the eye and say, oh, look, I don't believe in ghosts. But if someone told me that place was haunted and listed off the things,
I
that I'd
wouldn't
still
buy
go
it.
ahead and buy, that it wouldn't impact my decision. Let me just
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
You may
Yeah.
still buy it,
Definitely.
but would it
Definitely.
impact your decision?
We're still superstitious little monkeys after all. I think
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
we do need to sort of talk about is if you do think you're being haunted or whatever, like what are some of the things you can do to help your situation or
Yep.
to sort of work through that and, you know, address the be all question of like when to move.
Move.
Because I know we say that in
And
jest,
I'm out.
but like there
And I'm
are
out.
cases where that has been their that the last resort has been reached because it's just gotten unbearable. So I definitely think from like a practitioner's point of view that if you feel like you've got something in the house, feel into what that energy feels like, the presence is, and if it's not good, you are within your rights to tell it to fuck off. You're well within your rights to tell anything to not be in your house if you don't want it, be it good or bad. It's your house, it's not theirs. They don't need to be in there if you don't want them in there. Good energetic practices like general protections. That might be wearing protective crystals if you're into that. That might be doing black salt or white salt things in doorways, windowsills and stuff like that. It could even just be using protective symbols and stuff and just charging with an intent of
sound cleansing.
Yeah, sound cleansing, less woo-woo stuff, smoke cleansing, that sort of like general daily energetic hygiene that you can do to keep things out and keep your space nice and cleansed and clear. If you do have good spookies that you're like, okay, you're welcome, sometimes you can even ally with them and go, listen, I don't want trash in my house. Keep the riffraff outside, please. Keep the riffraff
Be my energetic bouncer.
Yeah, this is not a halfway house for sprites, right?
Yeah.
So you can do that, and we said that in like our ancestral podcast. Beloved dead are there. They're going to protect you better than anyone. So they're your best energetic bouncers. But beyond that, if it's gotten to a point where it's like infesting your life and it's just causing rife, you can't sleep, you're having nightmares, you're hearing all sorts of sounds, you might be getting physically touched or energetically jumped, things like that, it's probably better off to come and have someone come in who is experienced in dealing with spirits and things like that. general psychics can sort of give you a hint of what's happening, but when you're wanting to force something out, you want someone with like experience who
Yeah.
can get on the same level as that entity. So I would recommend someone who is a medium, with psychic abilities that is
And
experienced in that area.
I'm going to put in here too, if you
Yeah.
are of a religious ilk,
Yeah.
there are practices involved around that about blessing dwellings and blessing homes.
Yeah.
And not for a second am I going to say that that's not going to help.
Yeah.
If that's your religious practice, and that's your belief system, fall back on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if you're not religious and you think,
Give it a fall back
getting
on it.
someone in there, like a priest or
Priest.
whoever that you feel comfortable with coming in and that, will take you seriously, because there's nothing worse than having someone come in and just use you for entertainment, or they think you're joking. You don't need to be gaslit in your experience, but there's nothing wrong with asking them to have a look through. And and be sure to be safe about it if you're paying someone to do that, because there definitely are people who will take advantage of you out there. But sometimes things need to just be pushed out and then protections and things reinforced. I would say overall, if you are at the point where you're at your fucking wits end and you're out of your brain and you're questioning whether you have schizophrenia, or it's just, the old lady
Yeah.
in your bed is a right royal beep, and it's detrimental to your physical and mental well-being, and you can't, and all the debunking is just proving that it's, more than likely that, then I would suggest relocating or moving.
And I know I was very flippant at the start saying I'd just be out of there, I'd just be gone.
Yeah.
And I know I was being very flippant, but like, come on, like,
Yeah.
at what point do you just cut your losses on that one?
Yeah.
Unless you think you know someone, if you've got someone that can handle it, then obviously you try that first
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
just pack your bags and move your family and say,
Yeah.
I'm out. But I think we need to also point out, you need to establish whether it's a localized, if you believe it to be a localized haunting. So is it related to the dwelling that you're in, or
Yes.
is something that's attached to you?
It
Because
could
there's
be
no point moving
yeah.
if it's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It's just a monkey on your back.
And
Like,
someone who, practices energetic healing, or they're a medium or whatever, will be able to tell you if that is
yes.
the case. Because more than likely they would do a walkthrough of your home or whatever, and they'll say what's happening. And usually they can tell straight away if the presence is sort of like attached to the space, or if it's someone who's, brought the brought the shit in on their shoe, so to speak. And
Yep.
that it's following them. And in 9 times out of 10 too, if you're moving from place to place and it's still happening in your new place, chances are it's you that has the attachment, not
Yep.
the place. And some areas too, it's the land. So the
Yep.
land has had shit happen on it. There's an energetic imprint. The stuff there is not rested. And we develop things like that these days, and so it's gonna get a bit hectic on that plane of existence. So there's that.
And we've got,
Well,
I believe we have researched this pretty hard and
yeah.
looked at a lot of different, that's why I think it's going to have to go into another podcast. But there are
Yeah.
many places and many things, like the Queen Mary haunting. Almost 50 people died on the Queen Mary during its course, and quite a few more were killed in its travels in terms of knocking out another ship. And
It's so bizarre, isn't it?
so bizarre. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these to talk about. The Queen Mary, Winchester. Everyone knows about the Winchester House. We've all seen the movie now. But there's a lot more of them than you think.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot more of them than you think. And I found some that I'm just like, I wish I hadn't read that. I wish I didn't know about
Yeah,
that one.
that was a bit creepy. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that's a bit
stick to that.
like people getting
Yeah.
buried in the walls of places. Not
Yes.
sure about that. But
uh,
we could talk about that
yeah.
another time.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that brings a wrap to this episode. You know, to all you beautiful folks out there who are listening to our podcast, Thanks for joining us. And remember, curiosity may have killed a few cats, but there is no growth in ignorant bliss.
Some protection maybe in the curiosity too.
Those cats did not have their energetic protections up very well. So
they didn't have the bell around their neck.
They didn't. If only they'd had a bell around their collar, they might not have gotten possessed by fucking Sheba.
Really safe. Get yourself some bells, people.
Get yourself some fucking bells. Yeah. Anti-demon. Get out of here. Be gone.
Be gone.
Alrighty.
All right, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.